Well, it's been a while. Good to see you. You're looking good. At least I believe you're looking good. So it's been a while. Life has been kind of crazy for Abby and myself. Abby started a new job. We're pushing forward in ministry. I've had the opportunity to preach a number of times, do a couple seminars. Hopefully, if you're watching this, you've seen either you were there when I was preaching or you saw the seminar. If you came, thank you. But I have a set of videos that we're going to do here. That this first video is going to be part one of a three-part series. So Abby and myself, we just returned this last week from a road trip down the coast to San Diego, in which we got to see the Redwood forest, drive across the Golden Gate Bridge, took Scout on his first big adventure. He got to see the beach for the first time. We got to see Disneyland. Didn't go, but we got to see it. And just got to spend some time together. And I don't know if you're like me, but when you get out of your comfort zone, when you get out of where you're home, and you get out and you start to adventure, God really kind of speaks to you. And this has been my experience with this last week. And I want to take the next three videos to kind of unpack some of the things that God showed me specifically in our time in the Redwood forest. If you've never been to the Redwoods, I would encourage you to go. Abby had never gone, and we had gone, we had seen, and there's something that you just have to see it to believe it. These massive trees, we don't have anything like this here in Washington. Nothing this size that we're talking feet in diameter. And it's just amazing. As you clicked on this video, you probably saw one of these trees that we saw. And in comparison to how big we are. At the end of this video, I'll post another video or another picture or two to show you just how big these trees are. I mean, they are awe-inspiring. But as we went through the Redwoods and we got to see just the massive nature of these trees, there were a few things that came up. And the first thing I want to talk about, and we'll talk about in this video, is the massive size of the roots. And we have a picture of Abby that I'll put at the end here, where she's standing there, and the root system of this tree that has fallen is 2, 3, 4 times taller than she is. I mean, massive, huge roots, which I guess you have to have if the tree is going to be 300 plus feet tall and feet across. You have to have a good root system. And we know something about, with the roots coming from the Bible. If we look at Ephesians 3, verse 17 specifically, it says, Christ will make his home in your heart. And when you trust in him, your roots will grow down into God's love and keep you strong. So we know that with roots comes strength. And seeing these trees, with how big the root system is, to be that tall, you have to have massive roots. You have to have a root system that goes way out and deep in order to sustain the size of that tree. I mean, these trees have withstood fire, lightning, flood, earthquakes, and they've stood for hundreds of years. They've stood through the toughest that nature has to offer. And even when they fall, it's awe-inspiring to see that they have fallen because of how massive their root system is. So we see as Christians that if we want to grow tall like a redwood, we have to have our roots go down deep. And seeing the trees around here, you pull a tree, it's kind of difficult, but to see a massive tree, a tree that stands head and shoulders above any other tree that we see here, in order to understand how it can live, and as strong as it is, you have to understand that its roots are huge. looking at some of these roots in these trees are bigger than the trunks of the trees that we have around here. And it's necessary if it's going to grow that big. See, if we're going to grow big, whether it's naturally or spiritually, we have to have massive roots. We have to have roots that go down deep. We have to have roots that are thick and strong and able to dig into the deeper things of God. When we look at what's going on in the world today, so much stuff is going on the surface. There's so much that's happening that we see that really there is so much dryness. And that's the other thing about California. They're in the middle of a drought, and they consistently are in a drought. But yet these trees have survived drought. Why? Because there's water way down deep underneath the surface that they're able to tap into. As Christians, in a world that is spiritually dry right now, that feels like God isn't around, that their spirituality is kind of flaking away because it's in a dry spell. As a Christian, even in the midst of dryness, we can get that sustenance, we can get that growth, we can get our thirst quenched if we go deep with God. But that means that we have to develop roots that will go through the bedrock, that will go through the deep, the soil of where we live, and get into God. If we will do that, we'll see massive growth in our life in the midst of drought, in the midst of famine, in the midst of struggle. We'll continue to grow when everything else around us is struggling. And like the great redwoods that give sustenance, give shelter to the birds, give shade to the people, other things grow underneath it, gives this cool comfort to that everything else around it. Without it, you would have an area that would be kind of arid. But these trees bring life to other things. And as a Christian, if we will dig down deep and allow God to grow us from the roots up, we'll see that we can actually bring life to others in the midst of their dryness, in the midst of their struggle, in the midst of their hurt, their hopelessness. We can bring hope. We can quench their thirst in their dry time if we'll just allow our roots to go down deep. But if we're going to do that, we're going to grow in our stature, right? So many of us, if you're like me, you desire to make a big impact for God. You desire to leave a big impact when you're gone. Well, if you're going to leave a redwood-sized impact, you're going to have massive roots to help you grow. Because as you grow, if you don't have those roots, as the world tries to knock you down, you will fall. However, if you can develop massive roots, you can be strong and stand against those attacks. But also, if you're going to be that big, have the stature of a redwood as opposed to a small little willow tree, you're going to have massive roots to allow massive nutrients into your life. See, the bigger you become, the stronger you become, the more you need God's nutrients in your life. The more you need God to sustain you. The bigger stature you become in standing against the attacks of the world, in standing in dryness, and standing strong and being prosperous and growing in the midst where everything else is struggling, you need to have massive roots to take in the massive nutrients that God spiritually is giving you. Seeing that these root balls and how big these roots were to sustain the life and the lifespan of these trees, to allow them to grow to be 10 feet across, 12 feet across. I mean, I'm sure you've seen pictures of cars driving through these trees, or youth groups wrapped around arm in arm to get around the outside of these trees. They got to be that big because the roots are so strong that they allow so much nutrients to come into that tree. It would be like taking a coffee straw and upgrading to a fire hose. You get a lot more water when you suck through the fire hose than you do through that coffee straw. And it's the same thing when we allow our roots to grow. You might not see the growth when the tree's standing up tall, but you can know that down below, those unseen roots are just as massive as that tree. Because without those massive roots, that massive tree would fall. It wouldn't last 3, 4, 5, 600 years, 1,000 years, however long these trees have been around. So we need to have roots that dig down deep, that give us the strength. The deeper our roots go, the stronger we're going to be. The more we focus on growing our roots, the more nutrients we get, the bigger impact we can make. Because in order for us to get to be that big, we need constant nourishment. We need constant fulfillment. We need God to continue to fill us. And we cannot do that without having a massive root system. So if we look at, you'll see the pictures at the beginning of this and at the end, and just think about how big these trees are. Think about your life. If you want to grow to be a redwood in a forest of small trees, of oak trees. Oak trees are great. They're wonderful. Cedar trees are great. They're wonderful. But if you want to stand out above, you want to make just that much more impact for God, you might be operating at a cedar level. But if you want to go to a redwood level, focus on your roots. Build your roots. Others may not see it. In fact, when we look at these trees, we sometimes forget about the roots. But work on the roots, and if you build the roots, you strengthen the roots, you dig deeper with the roots, it allows more nutrients, allows more God into your life. And when you allow more God into your life, you get more growth in your life. So if you want to become a redwood, build your root system. Dig down deep. Be as Colossians 2:7 reminds us. Let your roots grow down into Him and let your lives be built on Him. Then your faith will grow strong in the truth you were taught, and you will overflow with thankfulness. If we can dig down deep into God, if we can let our roots dig deep into Him, we can have the strength to withstand whatever. We can have the strength to bring life in terms of drought. We can bring cool air, shade to those that are being parched by the world. And we can stand long term for people to see and be amazed at what God has done. So let me challenge you, build your roots. And if you've liked this, tune in to part 2 of lessons that we learned in the Redwoods. Thank you for listening, and God bless.